When a watch manufacturer produces a watch that has such a unique look and build quality, it grabs the attention of the public eye. There's something to be said about certain very special watches we have seen in our exciting but brief history of wristwatches. This beautiful Seiko Bullhead was introduced in the early 1970s, and after receiving mine back from my watchmaker, I just had to share. Stick around as I express my views of one of Seiko's most recognisable, yet simply coolest looking automatic chronographs ever produced, the Bullhead. Welcome back everybody. This beautiful Seiko Bullhead was introduced in the early 1970s, I think 1969 to be exact. And this model that I have here is the Speed Timer JDM version. There were three main variations manufactured in the gold and brown colour scheme, and this JDM version is the one that I particularly like the most, and for good reason. Firstly, why do collectors call this the Bullhead? Well, simply because of its aesthetics. You see, the chronograph has its pushers located at the 11 and 1 o'clock, and that resembles the head of a bull. Now, the reason the watch was designed this way was to prevent the wearer from accidentally depressing the pushers of the chronograph. Here's an example of a standard designed chronograph with the pushers located at the 2 and the 4, as you can see. Now, several manufacturers at the time were working on the exact same layout as Seiko, namely Omega with its 1969 Bullhead and Citizen with its variant as well. The movement in these bullheads is the 6138, which is famed for its robustness and amazing reliability. In fact, the 6138 is such a strong and reliable movement that it basically required little, if any, service at all. This is why these timepieces are some of the most desired Seiko watches among serious watch collectors today. This is a big watch, and many of these out there today are so banged up and scratched, it's very hard to find one in decent condition. It's a very retro looking watch, the colour scheme is easy on the eyes. I mean, who doesn't love chocolate brown with gold accents? It's stunning, typical 70s. Now, getting to the watch's dimensions, the case diameter of this watch is 44mm from there to there, and a wonderful lug-to-lug distance of only 45mm, so it's extremely wearable because of that distance. The case height of the watch is 16mm, and the lug width is 20mm. So I'll put this on the wrist just quickly to show you guys. There you go. So that's what it looks like on my 7-inch wrist. And as you can see, it's more than wearable. Its small lug-to-lug distance allows the watch to be worn, even though it has a relatively big height, as you can see. Now, the bracelet that this comes on is not the original bracelet. In fact, I've got a few bracelets here, as you can see. The original styling of the bracelet, well, on this particular model would have been an oyster bracelet, but a lot of guys basically swapped them out with these. These are just aftermarket bracelets, but look, typical 1970s, pretty shoddy, not very good quality, not the greatest deal of comfort. So what I've done is experiment a little bit. This is a current bracelet from a current Seiko. I'll leave the link in the description. And you know, having 4 adjustments, it's a lot more comfortable, a lot more doable. It's simply a standard 20mm. So you know, I love it. It brings the watch into the modern 21st century. So, but I've been experimenting with a couple of different types of looks, from leather, tan leather, to maybe even an engineer's bracelet, as you can see. So the watch, even though it was designed back in the 70s, it's pretty much a watch that's wearable today. It's something that we can use today because of its retro look. Now, getting back to the watch, the case itself has a combination of brushed surfaces as well as highly polished, and I think the fit, finish and the attention to detail is exceptional. You know, you pick up a vintage 1970s watch like this and you think, gee, this is really built well. This is a really nice piece. The bezel is basically an aluminium tachymeter scale insert with white and yellow markings. And racing car drivers used to use chronographs like this with a tachymetric scale to measure speed over a given distance. So basically what you do is you start the tachometer, you've got your scale, and over a mile or so, you know, when the car finishes you know, its wreck or its lap and so forth, you stop, you check your speed, what it would have been done as an average speed over that distance, and hard reset, away you go. So it's a really practical watch, and for that reason, these types of watches are classified as driver's watches. Now, getting onto the dial, the dial itself is lovely. It's an appealing color. It's a chocolate brown with obviously 2 sub-dials in gold, and it's very appealing. It's a 1970s design. As you can see, the color palette is typical 1970s, and the 2 sub-dials, one of them is a 12-hour register and the other is a 30-minute counter. Also, the big yellow hand functions as a 60-second sweep. So if I was to start the chronograph, as you can see, it starts the yellow hand from moving. It goes all the way around its rotation. We can stop it, and a hard reset. Now, the hands on this watch, as you can see, they're pencil hands. They're quite long, elegant, very easy to read. They're white, you know, so the contrast on the hands as compared to the brown dial is fantastic. The legibility is easy. Even the markers themselves, as you can see, there's white markers all the way around. There's no issues with legibility. In fact, this is ideal. It's an ideal watch to look at very quickly. You know, being a specific chronograph where you use it for motorsports, you know, check timing events and all the rest, you won't have a problem seeing where you're at. But I did mention at the beginning of this video that this JDM version is the version that I prefer as compared to the non-JDM version, because the other version that they produced out of the Bullhead had lume, whereas these versions, they don't have lume, neither on the hands nor on the markers. And the reason I prefer a watch like these Bullheads without the lume, is twofold. Number one, the lume that was used in those days pretty much perished. It didn't stand the test of time. So the version that came out with lume, it's very difficult to find one these days with, you know, with decent lume on it, unless of course you're lucky and you find a new old stock or something that, you know, hasn't been used. The majority of them have got corrosion, you know, the lume's broken down and it looks unsightly. Not that it can't be fixed. You take it to your watchmaker, they can re-lume it, but again, it requires a specific service to get the color of the lume correct so that it looks, you know, ideal with the watch's vintage. But the problem that I found is that there's a second issue that these Bullheads had. If the minute hand was to be in the way when you perform the hard reset, there was a likelihood that the sweep hand would come into contact with the minute hand. And when this occurred, the hand would flex or strike the minute hand, resulting in bending of the central shaft which these were mounted on. So that's why many of these today, the sweep hand does not reset to exactly 0. I'll give an example. So as you can see, the sweep hand is moving now. And like I said, the chronograph version that's got the lume, the minute hands and the hour hand have lume on them. They're slightly thicker. And some of the common problems are when this sweep hand would go past, if we were to stop it just after the minute hand, which I'll show you just now, just there, if I was to stop this like that and do a hard reset, which, there you go, it's reset to 0. Now that went all the way past the minute hand to reset, and the minute hand on the loomed version is slightly thicker, and the common problem was that sweep would hit that minute hand. So if a lot of the secondary market, if you look at some of these watches, you can see some of the lume is on, you know, inside the dial, it's broken apart, the shaft itself is bent. So as you can see, mine's reset to 0 exactly. Most of these watches don't reset to 0, and it's very, very difficult to fix. Personally, I prefer this version because even if it was to clip the minute hands, you know, you've only got white paint on that, so very easy to rectify, very easy to get fixed. So that's my personal preference. Again, that is subjective. Everyone is different. Most collectors will tell you, you know, get the lume version. They appreciate more, they're worth more in value. Everyone's different. For me, I like this. So, but I just wanted to share that with you guys. Now, getting back to the watch, the movement that this particular watch has is the famous 6138, and it's famed for being, like we said, robust and basically service free. It features 23 joules, 21,600 beats per hour, but for back in the day, these movements were breaking ground, you know, with innovations that we still see in today's watches. Things like shock resistance, you know, Seiko calls it die shock, you know, automatic hand winding. So Most of the movements back then, you know, you'd move your wrist and so forth. You'd have the watch on your wrist, and as you move, it winds the rotor inside and, you know, charges a spring to keep power reserve. Whereas these particular ones were, the 6138 was introduced with hand winding ability as well. So you can hand wind it, start the watch, away you go. It features quick set day and date. So as you can see, the day and the date on this particular watch, they're extremely easy to set with the crown. So I'll pull it out, and as you can see, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and I can also adjust the date. Nice and simple. Whereas the older watches, you had to wind the watch, you know, pull it out 2 clicks and wind it all the way around. Keep going, keep going, keep going, until you basically got around to a 24-hour scale, and then there you go, the day just changed and the date. So that was the old way of doing things. So with quick set, which was introduced in these particular movements, it was a welcome feature, and we still see that in today's movements. Also, we had dual language on the day complication. So nice little iterations that, you know, they introduced back then in these movements. We still have them today. So lastly, I must say I'm taken back. I'm taken back to the 70s when I hold a lovely example like this in my hands. Its superb build quality and uncompromised design, you know, it gets me to wonder whether or not the golden days of Seiko produced better quality products than today. And dollar for dollar, I think absolutely a resounding yes. So thank you for watching, guys, and I wanted to share these thoughts on this delightful piece of our history. And not only does it have a place in the past, but also finds great comfort on the wrists of today and for many, many years to come. And finally, if you like my content, guys, and you want to see more videos produced like this, I encourage you to subscribe and hit that notification bell, as it really does help the channel to grow. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you all in the next video.